Welcome to KBcast, the podcast for security executives, interviewing people from around the globe on how organizations can operate smarter and stay safer. Here's Carissa Breen.
I had the opportunity to chat with Marty McGregor from Secure Measure, and we discussed the often neglected topic, endpoint security. Marty shared his experience around working in this area for quite some time and how he transitioned into kickstarting Secure Measure, as well as his new approach to endpoint and the gaps that he believes people are missing. If you're keen to learn more, then please keep on listening. Awesome. Okay, so Marty, we like to start each and every episode with an overview of your history inside security. Can you walk our listeners through the genesis of your interest and subsequent journey through security?
I'd say the genesis of my journey started quite young. My dad was a developer or a programmer, as you'd call him in those days, and he worked in the field of computing through the 70s and 80s and on, right through to retirement. He used to bring home computers for me to play with and that sort of thing when I was very young, and software for Christmas, which is horrifying. I had IBM DOS 6.1 one year when who wants IBM DOS? But then I found myself working in little roles that he'd find me in holidays, building PCs or swapping network cards for his customers, all these sort of like random awful jobs that no one else wanted to do, until I started studying. And at that time I really had to make a choice about which way I'd want to go. The thought of working in IT was, and for most of my career, horrifying to me, and I always saw myself as an artist and a musician, so I was always embarrassed to say I fiddle with computers. But
I reckon that's cool. Way cooler.
Well, it's got cooler now, but back in those days,
You're
there
saying
was 5
back in the
people
original days?
Well, when I was there was a lot, but the people that used to do computing and even fiddle on the internet in those days there was about 5 in my school, and we used to meet each other in the library at lunchtime. So I don't know how cool that was, but
I find that cool. So that's fine.
Right. But I think what happened was, over the course of my career, and for much of it not enjoying working in technology, feeling a bit like a commodity, and just a metric like anything else. Finding security and the people-centric aspect of it, where what you're really doing is securing people and securing people's privacy and doing a good thing for the world. It's a way I've been able to express my creativity and my and some of my values, and that's what's made working in technology really rewarding for me, is finding security and privacy.
Wow, I love that, because we had another interview yesterday, and it was around privacy, and I think it's so important, and it's an area that not enough people outside of our space really understand. So when you say that you really value it, we need more people like you talking about that. Now, when you said you were horrified because you wanted to be an artist, retrospectively looking back on your career, how do you feel about making the decision to sustain a career in this? Are you sort of thinking like, yes, I made the right move? Like, are you enjoying it?
Well, I'm speaking to you now from my home recording studio, so I still do music, but what I've been able to do is make this something for my own pleasure, really, and technology has been my career. But I think because, from the outset, looking in, you don't expect to use so much creativity in technology, and especially in security. You're always, every day you've got to engage your brain to such a high degree to, if it's even just trying to get somebody to listen to you, it can be really challenging. Like you alluded to that before, people don't understand from the outside looking in what privacy is and the implications for society are. So it's an area where you're constantly having to rethink how you communicate and rethink how what people's thinking is, and trying to meet them in a way that you can help them understand some of the implications for their own lives, and not just now, but for the society that we're going to live in 10 years from now.
That's a really valid point, and I think it's probably the most common argument, so to speak, when it comes to like what's the issue in the industry, and it's that communications piece, it's the awareness. How do we talk to someone that doesn't have a background in this to understand why it's important, why they should invest in it, why they should spend money on it? And I think it's something that's going to take time and in the right attitude to know that these people aren't stupid. It's just not their area of expertise. But what is your area of expertise is, I understand your company deals with a range of security consulting areas. And I know companies often don't have a clue regarding their endpoint solutions, or even have multiple solutions that I've heard of to try and just plaster over poor implementation. So what's your take on endpoint, and how does it work?
Well, this is something I've been dealing with since 1998, sitting in a basement of a company called Kalamazoo with Norton Ghost, and making images of computer after computer after computer. It's the most people affecting area of technology. It's the portal that people use to access all of our applications, all the business applications that we create for them, and all of the systems and services that we create for our people to work is the endpoint. That's the staff computer. And because it's so close to people, it can be very easy to be clumsy in the way that we manage them. And typically that's always been the case. It's been so hard to get it right, so hard to get it to the point where we can build a machine for our staff consistently, time and time again, that allows them to be up in a situation where they're working very fast. And I think what's happened, because it's been so difficult over the last 20 years, it hasn't got better. It's actually got worse. And, that time when people would spend the money on having someone like myself sitting in a basement imaging machines over and over is still there in some extent, but it's for institutions that have become aware that they either have to do it, or they have looked into it and they're aware of how much money they're spending on trying to get their staff working with computers that don't really work for them. People are used to taking 2 weeks, and sometimes more in a bank, for example, until they get the machine up and running to the point where they can work, whether they've got the right access, the right applications, or whatever it may be. So it's very, very hard to do. And as a result, there hasn't been a lot of innovation. We were talking about this with Gartner, someone from Gartner a few weeks ago. They said it's one area in security, and that's securing the endpoint, where we haven't seen any innovation really at all. And the last innovation that we saw, which people might consider, next gen AV or something like that, is now quite a while ago. And we're also aware of that the limitations in that software as well. So what we've done is we've really used our experience over all of those years to try and solve that problem, that very hard problem, in a way that a company doesn't have to, and they can work with someone that can use a whole bunch of tools and services and experience to streamline some of these people-centric areas of the endpoint. And ultimately, we've had to do that because of how hard it is to secure them. So to give you an example, we have a customer that uses our endpoint solution, FreshPoint. And I was sitting next to their help desk the other day, and a developer came into work late without his machine, and went to the help desk and said, "Look, guys, I don't have time to go home and get my laptop. Can you please FreshPoint me a new device?" And I thought that was it was incredible that was normal, because people are so used to that being something that would be completely impossible. But a developer especially being able to get a new machine provisioned to them and up and running and able to work in a shorter time than they can drive home and pick up their laptop is telling of how rare it is to actually have a solution that's workable and fits around people, rather than the awful processes that we have trying to manage desktops now.
So do you think people became clumsy because the space hasn't innovated? And they're just like, no one kind of cares because there's been no new technologies that have really come out recently and everyone's kind of forgotten about it because it's all about threat intelligence and all these other things that are coming out that people are focusing on now?
Yeah, and I think we've changed the way that we work as well. We went through a period where it got a little bit easier because they're only working from an office where they had access to infrastructure, so that there was technologies that could manage a desktop on premise. But now that people work so distributed, and a lot of them, the customers that we speak to, they don't work on infrastructure in their office anymore. They work on cloud, cloud environments that the company has built. So things have changed, and that's meant that even the tools that we did have to manage these have become a little bit outdated. And what I think a lot of us have tried to do is let's just forget the desktop. Let's try and secure our cloud environments, and then we can come worry about our endpoints later, or we'll just exclude them from having access or as little access as possible, and that should solve the problem. But I think people are starting to learn now that didn't really help, and so many of the breaches that we see now really originate on someone's endpoint with a user that perhaps succumbs to a phishing attack or something like that.
Okay, so let's move along to the next part of the interview, which is endpoint isn't a sexy buzzword in the industry, but it's an absolute fundamental, like diet, exercise versus some new supplement for weight loss. It can be really hard to get people to eat their vegetables. So how are you getting buy-in from people?
I don't know how well I'll do in this regard because I can't understand anybody who doesn't eat vegetables. I love vegetables, and
I do as well.
So I can't relate with that example, but I think just like someone who eats vegetables and loves vegetables, you appreciate the health benefits, and it creates a cycle where you feel good, so you want more of them. I think it's the same with managing your endpoint. I think people that aren't aware of the problem, who are eating junk food every day and wait till the doctor tells them they're about to die before they do something.
Oh gosh.
Probably not aware how much money they're spending on managing their endpoints poorly now. They're not really the cost of staff waiting for devices. Every time a device needs to be rebuilt takes potentially days for them to be up and running again. The amount of time that people waste onboarding and offboarding staff, all of those costs add up. And I think people just throw money at software and install more and more agents on their endpoints that they don't manage very well, or just pay for more people in the help desk to support them. But at the end of the day, if you have good health and good hygiene with your endpoint, and you start to see that there's actually an ROI in doing this properly, not only in just the performance of the staff and how able they are to work, but also in reducing costs in help desk, trying to resolve problems and that sort of thing.
So can you give any advice to our listeners around some high-level strategy or put them in the right direction when it comes to health and hygiene around the endpoint that people, if they're not doing today, they can be like, oh, Marty said this, I should probably look at that?
I think because it is a people-centric thing, that's where you need to start. What we set out to do really with this product was to try and make something that secured the desktop, because that's a very hard thing to do. But when you get to that point, you realize what I actually have to do is I have to make sure that I can deploy this thing quickly and have the right applications that user needs and the right access. Yep. So I think when you look at this problem, you want to avoid manual processes. You don't want someone in the help desk imaging a machine or rebuilding a machine and installing apps and setting up your access, because it's always going to be problematic. They're always going to forget things. Automation is really key here. You want You want to get it right for that user profile or that type of role, and make sure that they can work and they have everything that they need. As soon as the image has been built, from that automated process. And then having that predictability is what really makes the difference. So each time somebody needs a device, there's an expectation of how long it's going to take. They can account for that. They can go out and get a coffee or whatever before they come back and start working again. It's that predictability that comes from automating. I think that's what's critical. And you need to get away from trying to solve this problem with people looking at it the same thing over and over and over.
Do you still think a lot of companies are putting in a lot of manual labor to this? I've worked in companies before. I understand when it takes 3 weeks to get a functioning laptop and then they've forgotten something, or someone spilt coffee on your laptop, so the whole thing has to get rebuilt again. Do you think, why aren't people sort of opting for more automation to make it easier for them and less manual labor around getting people to do quite basic tasks like imaging a laptop?
I think because it hasn't necessarily been the fault of the service desk or the help desk. Technology really hasn't been there, and the facilities to help the changes in the way people use workstations and this distributed workforce hasn't really been there. It's only starting to happen now, and we've created a product to do this, and in a way that a company doesn't have to consider how this will all work, and they can consume a product that they pay for every month. But that's a very new thing, and we're one of the first, and potentially the first, to do something like what we've done for the endpoint. So it's really only been possible for us to achieve this in the last year or two, with some of the services and the capabilities that have been available now on platforms like Azure and AWS. So it's a problem that's been waiting to be solved for a long time. And I think that's where we're at now. We're going to start seeing a lot more innovation around this because everybody struggles with it.
Okay, so let's jump into the product dev stuff. How did you come up with the idea?
So it started from us dealing with customers who had compliance issues. Typically, their cloud estate and their on-prem equipment would do okay because they're spending a lot of time managing it. But when it came to their endpoints, there would be typically a lot of findings, and it'd be very hard for them to prove to regulators that they'd done what they said they did. For example, they might have installed AV or a hardened image on an endpoint, but when it came to trying to provide evidence, often they wouldn't have visibility of those endpoints, especially ones that would not be within the organization or remote workers and that sort of thing. So what we originally wanted to do was create a desktop that had a whole bunch of security controls on there that we could monitor from anywhere in the world and create live compliance and security reports of those endpoints. And from that place, we saw that doing that probably wasn't enough. We'd have to do deployment of these endpoints as well. We'd have to potentially manage some of the aspects of it as well, like patching, because organizations found that really hard to do. But the critical piece and what got us here was making sure that the customer's applications were there and configured the way that they needed to be. And that was the real critical piece, because when you get a vanilla Windows 10 or OS X device like we support, there's not much you can do with it. You need your applications. It's like when you pull a new iPhone out of the box, you go straight to the App Store. So we've built a system where we can automatically package applications, a whole series of applications, and make them available on the company's store, their own personal online app store. They get a whole bunch of apps that are generic to every user in the organization, but then they can also get other ones that they need as well. And all of those are managed and updated, and we can monitor the status and the versions of those applications, plus the security settings on the device, the patch level, a whole bunch of things for encryption, you name it. We can do that for the whole fleet and give real-time compliance reports to auditors.
Tell me more about the vision for your company and what do you believe Secure Measure is going to achieve with some of the clients that you're working with, and what's sort of on the horizon for that?
All of our founders were engineers, so it's always going to be a question of engineering and how we can engineer solutions to help companies deal with security and privacy. I think one of the things that I've learned in my career is that security is very hard to get done. It's very hard to get buy-in, and the best way to do that is to come with other benefits. So just like where we've really looked at the productivity issues and aspects that the customers really do care about, and efficiencies with staff and things like that, we've used that as a way to inject security and deal with things that are very difficult to deal with. And it's an engineering solution to a security problem, and we'll keep doing things like that and finding opportunities for us to give value to people and businesses in what they're trying to achieve and in their goals and their businesses. But all the while with this sneaky behind the scenes ambition to address security and privacy and help people understand what the implications of that are, but also that there's benefits to addressing it and taking it seriously.
Mm-hmm. Now, for some of our audience going through the startup or the scale-up phase, as a new security company, it's quite a red ocean out there at the moment. What's been your greatest challenges and how have you overcome them?
Security is such a massive problem in the world right now, and particularly in the area of privacy, for people like yourself and I, there is still so much opportunity for innovation and for new organizations and new types of industries that fit under that umbrella. The problem's so big, and we're solving it in a very mediocre way at the moment. So there's lots of room for everyone, but I think that there's a bit of a problem there because we've all sort of been lumped in as security people, and people have a way of thinking about security people, and at the moment, I think what we're trying to do as a company is we're trying to express our uniqueness and try to say, hey, we're not what you think a security person is. We have another reason for being here, and we're trying to find people that align with our values and want to preserve our values. Like they do care about their customers, and they do care about the implications of privacy on their customers. And they, just like Apple has in their advertising campaigns lately, using privacy as a marketing tool, that people do see that there's a way that they can also show their customers that addressing privacy is something they're doing for their best interest, and that's why they are more worthy of the business than, say, someone else.
I think having a level of integrity is really important in this space, and I was in a conversation this morning around this characteristic of an individual but also a company's value as well, because especially if you're dealing with products, you want to be able to deliver what you say you're going to be able to deliver, because there's time and time again where a lot of people promise you the world and they won't be able to deliver it. And I think that when that happens to companies, I think they feel a little bit on the back foot then, and they feel perhaps apprehensive about buying a particular innovative product or service because they feel that there's still this, they're holding back that level of integrity, the honesty around what your product actually does versus what you say it does. And I think if people be a little bit more honest in the industry about it, what it really does, and knowing that, hey, we actually can't do that, or you should go and speak to these guys, we don't actually cover that in terms of capability. I think just sticking in your own lane a lot would help, especially if you're specialized in one particular area. Only specialize in that and try not to go to broaden yourself so thin that you're kind of not really helping anyone. You're just confusing people.
I think that's a great question and really well put. And I think you're pointing out something that I think about a lot, and that does trouble me a lot. And we don't want the business community to stop listening to us. We don't want them to think that these are people that can't be trusted for the exact reason that you've articulated. And what has happened, and people in the industry are always very aware of it, is vendors have made promises that aren't true, even from or they haven't done a good job at explaining what they mean when they say certain things. So a lot of the time we'll come up with somebody who might be on one of the big cloud platforms or something like that. And throughout the process of them moving their technology and their data assets to that provider, they've been given assurances from the people in that organization that, don't worry, our platform's secure. And the amount of times I've spoken to a business that thinks, don't worry, we're secure. We've been told that the platform that we're using is very secure. They don't realize that there's very, very important distinctions there that haven't been articulated to them by the vendor or by the platform provider, and most of the time because it didn't serve their purpose. And that's that they may be secure, but they're only secure from the perspective of how it relates to their business and what they're trying to achieve. They're not saying that your business is going to be secure. And what we need to do as people with integrity in this industry is, when we go deal with someone, we need to be considerate of that person and that person's business, that person's life, that person's journey and mission, and thinking about securing that, not making promises about security that don't meet that criteria of their personal security. And the problem with it is, often when people are told that something's secure, the way that they relate it to themselves is by saying, okay, that must mean I'm secure. And we really need to do a better job of that, because what's happening over and over and over is people in businesses are being let down. Yes. Breaches are happening. And the question that they're often asked is, why didn't any of the security people around me tell me that I was in such a precarious situation? And how many times have we seen, these poor CEOs that have been just come out the other end of a data breach, and they're all sweaty and having to answer these very specific security questions, and it's the first time they've ever had to do it in their lives. We want to try and avoid that happening to people, rather than gloating and mocking those people when it does happen.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's a really key point for people listening as well, that there needs to be a level of integrity across everyone, because we're trying to solve this problem as a collective, not just an individual for personal gain or whatever that may look like. So what can people do when it comes to endpoint protection that typically isn't handled optimally?
I think they need to interview their people, understand how they work, and then work back from there. I think, as we articulated earlier, automation is key. So trying to find out what people are doing and trying to find similarities and automating those is absolutely key, because the end goal really is consistency. We want our users to be able to get to work and it be a predictable environment. A lot of the time, the frustrations that I see from users is just because, my bookmarks aren't there anymore, or the application is in a different spot now, and things where a technology person might say, oh, it's there. No, the job was done. For that person, it really wasn't. So that's where the key is getting that part right, either through really good onboarding and education, or with good interviews.
Amazing, Marty. I loved it. I think you gave a lot of great insight, particularly on the endpoint side of it, but also giving a little bit of your knowledge on the broader technology landscape. If people want to get in touch with you, where's best to connect?
They can email me at martin@securemeasure.com.au. Go to our website, securemeasure.com.au. You can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Well, Marty, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. You've brought a wealth of knowledge. I really loved your story growing up when you're younger about all the computer stuff, because I do hear that similar story to a lot of people I do interview. So it's obviously part of the pedigree in this space. So I really, really do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carissa.
Thanks for tuning in. As always, we hope you got some new ideas or ways of thinking from this episode. And remember, you can always reach out to our guests if you do have more questions. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and we always love to hear your feedback. So leave a review on iTunes and we might just give you a shout out on a future episode. You can find me on LinkedIn as well as on @IamCarissaBreen on Twitter and Instagram. And if you'd like to know more about how we help tech companies, check out CarissaBreenIndustries.com. Until next time, stay safer.